Andy Bannister wonders if humans actually matter, then goes into a religious diatribe showing that he hasn't thought about it at all. But this is Andy we're talking about, so that shouldn't surprise anyone. And we're back with another Andy Bannister video. And people keep asking why I bother with this delusional dumbass. And the answer is, he's one of the people who relatively consistently provide content that I can tear into because he's got some serious intellectual problems. But at least where Andy is concerned, he's relatively concise and he makes short-form content that makes interesting responses possible. So, I don't think Andy is going anywhere anytime soon, at least not unless he grows up and develops some critical thinking skills. Anyhow, this time around, he wants to tell us that humans have value, then completely fails to understand reality, then absolutely misunderstands his own religion. It's the kind of absurdity that we've come to expect from SolasCPC. So let's go take a look.
Are we matter, or do we matter?
Both. I mean, clearly we are matter, and we do matter to ourselves and to people who care about us. We don't matter in the grand scheme of things, which I'm sure is what Andy is going for. But to real people, yes, we do make a difference most of the time. Are we done now? Can we go home?
You know, that question gets to the heart of what it means to be a human being. What is a human being? Well, if you read the writings of some of the great atheist minds and thinkers of the last 100 years or so, you can find some pretty astonishingly bleak answers.
Meaning, Andy wants comfort, not reality. That's the general problem with the religious, though, isn't it? It isn't enough to have the real world. The real world has to mean something. It has to have some greater purpose so that they can feel good about life instead of just dealing with what actually is. The religious are driven by emotion, not intellect, and it shows in every single video that they make.
So, for example, Bertrand Russell, one of the most famous atheist philosophers of the 20th century, notoriously said human beings are just a random collocation of atoms. In other words, just the particles that we're made of. Or Francis Crick, co-discoverer of the DNA molecule. Crick said of human beings, we are nothing more than a pack of neurons. Or more recently, Richard Dawkins, one of the most famous atheists of recent years, described human beings as just lumbering genetic robots dancing to our DNA.
And what's wrong with that? That is an accurate representation of what is factually true in objective reality. Oh, I know it's not emotionally comforting, but so what? It's real. What's wrong with you, Andy? You need to get your emotions out of overdrive and just deal with it. But then again, this is religion we're talking about, the delusional system not known for actually dealing with much of anything.
You listen to those answers to the question, what is a human being, coming out of atheism, and they are astonishingly bleak. And not merely that, they have some pretty drastic implications, especially when we think about human value or we think about ethics and how we relate to one another.
No, they really don't, because value is and has always been subjective. What you are worth is not determined by the world, but by yourself and by those who value you. You're not magically special, Andy. You never have been, and you never will be. But all you care about is how your beliefs make you feel. Therefore, you make absurd proclamations and pretend they have to be true because it gives you a warm fuzzy, no matter how ridiculous they actually are in reality. And for some reason, you're proud of that. Again, what's wrong with you?
In terms of human value, is a human being's value, is your worth as a human being merely the parts of which you're made?
No. The worth of a human being is earned, not just granted. It is the content of your character, not the fact of your existence. You are not magically special because you are born with 46 chromosomes. You become special because you make yourself special. But that takes work. It takes responsibility. It takes actually making something useful of yourself. And when it comes to the apologist crowd, people who make a living lying to people about imaginary friends, they probably aren't worth that much to the world.
Is the way to value a human life to work out, how much iron, how much potash, how much sodium, how much phosphorus, how much fat comprises the human being in question, put those chemical components onto eBay, and then see what someone will bid us for them? Is that the worth of a human being? I think most of us would be horrified by that idea. Or do we value a human life by, what you can contribute to the gene pool? How many descendants you've had and how effective those descendants have been? Or how much you've earned, or other kind of metrics?
To some degree, yes. Not how much you breed, because, let's be honest, any idiot can pop out a unit every 9 months, and lots of them do. Not really how much you earn, although that can certainly be a factor. I'd argue that how much you're worth is based on how much you positively impact the world around you, how many lives you touch and improve by your presence. Because, as I said, value is subjective. I value different people differently because they have proven themselves to be worth different things. And Andy, whether you're willing to admit it or not, so do you. This honestly can't be that hard to comprehend.
And most of us, I think, would say the idea of valuing somebody based upon the chemicals that make them up or their contribution to society is absolutely abhorrent. We need a way of valuing people irrespective of what they're made of or what they do.
No, we don't. Outside of a very general respect for other people, how we individually value people that impact our lives is irrelevant to an overall value that can be placed on a human being. You, for example, Andy, I don't value you at all. Yeah, you're fun to laugh at once in a while, but if you drop dead tomorrow, I wouldn't care. I probably wouldn't even notice. I don't know you outside of making fun of your religious stupidity on YouTube. You have no inherent value to me whatsoever. Now, that doesn't mean that I want you to come to harm. That's enlightened self-interest talking. But it really wouldn't bother me that much if you did. Welcome to reality.
Well, the other thing that those misanthropic atheist answers about the human question lead to is they have drastic consequences for how we treat one another. Should we really be treating each other as nothing more than random collections of atoms? After all, if we chop the top off a tree, we've just rearranged some atoms, is it okay to chop the top off a human being? Because that's equally just rearranging atoms.
You're an idiot, Andy. Because humans, as a social species, we need other humans around to survive and thrive. So we have a social structure that requires other people and their individual skills to make it through the day. We don't require individual trees. We can pragmatically say that having other humans around is a net benefit. Exactly what humans? That may be debatable, but humans at all? Yes.
How we treat one another really depends on a firm answer to the question, what is a human being?
No, not really. But as I've pointed out many times in the past, the religious view morality as a command, not as a system. They want firm instructions about how to live and how to act that they can just mindlessly follow and not think about it much. Because it's easier than having to come up with a workable system of morals that will probably not be universal and having to deal with the consequences. You know, the way this actually works in reality. It's why they invent gods to hand down pronouncements from on high that everyone supposedly has to follow and not ask any serious questions about, just because it's easier than thinking.
So what's the alternative to those desperately bleak, nihilistic, misanthropic answers to the question from atheism? Well, radically counter to those, the Christian faith says something different.
It says, we're too stupid to do this on our own. Please, magical Sky Daddy, make it all easy on us. And if you think that's a good idea, you've got something seriously wrong with you.
In the book of Genesis in the Bible, chapter 1, verses 26 and 27, the Bible says that when God created human beings, he made us, male and female, each one of us, he created in the image of God. We bear God's image as human beings. We are not just matter, we are image bearers.
But your big book of multiple choice is laughable, so who cares what it says? This is all just an emotional reaction to a realistic problem, but the religious have a serious issue dealing with reality, don't they? They want to be magically special, even though they're not. They want to have inherent value, even though they don't. They want to feel good about being human, even though that's a silly thing to do. It doesn't matter how they react to reality. It only matters that reality is real. Feelings be damned.
And that has huge implications, because that means when we think about how we should treat a fellow human being, how we should value another life, the answer is we don't just treat them as matter and material or genetic lumbering robots, but we treat them as fellow image bearers with incredible value and dignity.
Yeah, but the history of Christianity doesn't show that's how religion works, does it? The Crusades, the Inquisitions, various wars of conquest perpetrated by the churches, racism and slavery around the world, all based on the idea that we're the chosen people and you're slime. Die, heathens! Because if the religious treated all people with dignity, I might not say. But the fact is, they don't, and therefore they deserve all the derision we can pile on them.
But one final thought about human value. According to economic theory, value is not inherent, but is determined by what somebody is prepared to pay. So, for example, I spent several £100s on my iPad because being able to play Candy Crush Saga while sitting on the lavatory is useful to me. But were I to take that iPad to a desert island where there's no Wi-Fi, no power, no cell phone reception, what would that piece of plastic and glass and aluminium be worth? What would somebody pay me for it? Probably not very much, because perhaps the most you could do with it is use it as a fancy chopping board for shellfish or something. Its value would be less because people would not be willing to pay for it.
As far as that goes, that's valid. Things are only worth what someone is willing to give you for them or do to get them. But you are emotionally invested in the idea that humans are somehow special, that we are somehow better than mere things, and that's not always the case. Of course, you'll now go on to say something stupid, so let's go watch.
Well, if value is determined by what someone is prepared to pay, what's the value of a human life?
You tell me. It depends on the life. I would find more value in a company owner that employs hundreds of people and gives money to charity than I would in some homeless guy sitting on a freeway off-ramp begging for money. Now, that doesn't mean that we as society don't assign some arbitrary value to all human life. Again, we are social creatures that need other people around, no matter how little those other people actually accomplish. But given a choice, would I rather have an entire world of Bill Gates clones, or would I rather have an entire world of, well, Andy Bannisters? Yeah, Bill Gates wins. Damn straight.
What is someone prepared to pay for me and for you, for each one of us? Well, of course, the Christian faith here says something incredible, because it says that when God came in the flesh in the person of Jesus and went to the cross and died in my place, in your place, to pay for the rebellion and the sin and the wrongdoing and the injustice at the heart of each one of us, that God paid through the person of Jesus the highest possible price, the life of Jesus, his son, for each one of us.
Yes, Jesus had a bad weekend for your sins, we know, but apparently the temporary inconvenience of an all-powerful God is worth a lot more than all the lives snuffed out by your imaginary friend in that worldwide flood of his, or all of the people he purposely afflicted with cancer, or all of the people murdered by his followers, his personal representatives on this planet. Yeah, that really shows the kind of value Christians assign to human life. Their own deity is the biggest mass murderer of them all.
That says a tremendous amount about us, but it says even more about God and how much he loves us. And it raises the question, how are we going to respond to the one who gives us the only basis I know for true human value, for true human dignity, and for your life actually mattering?
Except, as I've already shown, it doesn't work out that way. There is a difference between actually examining a question intellectually and just rationalizing your way to an emotionally comforting conclusion without bothering to think that hard. This isn't reason, it's wishful thinking. It's intellectual laziness. It's emotional comfort for the sake of emotional comfort. Rationality be damned. But when you're religious and emotionally frail, what do you expect? It's the best they can do because they're clearly not that smart to begin with. They wish the world was the way that they see it in their tiny little heads. They care only about their own happiness and not about dealing with the facts as they actually are, which is why every single one of Andy's videos falls apart under the weight of its own irrationality. He isn't concerned with the truth because the truth is too harsh for his precious little fifis to handle, meaning he's an emotional child. And that's kind of stupid when you think about it. But hey, what better word to use to describe the religious? They're stupid!